Reds visiting the Rebels in New South Wales. Weird as that sound. Neutral ground, and it finishes after 90 minutes. They go the super time, extra 10 minutes, and the team still cannot be separated. It's an 18-all draw. So probably a pretty disappointing one for both sides, because essentially the Rebels got themselves in a position to win it and let it slip. And I would say in that period of extra time, the Reds were a couple of meters away from winning it with a kick. But weird game. Ends in a draw. Pretty unsatisfying, but that just is what it is. It was interesting to see the way the teams tactically play the game in that golden point time as well. To be fair, this game was ugly, especially in that first half. The second half improved quite a lot, but the first half I wouldn't have blamed anybody for switching off, because it was not a great ad for the game. But that being said, it was wet. It was really wet. You could see the raindrops on the camera, and if you can see that, at the ground it's a lot heavier than what you're seeing. So it was played like a game in the wet. The Rebels actually started with some really good phases. They went like 10 phases in the pouring rain, but the line-out wasn't straight, and the line-outs in both sides were atrocious in this game. They were about as bad as you'll see in a professional game. The Rebels did get 3 points on the board early, though, through a penalty about a quarter of an hour. So they went in front. There were big tackles, like McDermott got smashed, and then the lineouts again weren't going straight. There were knock-ons. The Rebels missed touch. I think Timur kicked it out on the full. So it was not a lot going on. Errors, mistakes, lack some kind of judgment at times, but 25 minutes, the Rebels went 8 phases, got within about a metre, knocked it on. They went back for an advantage. The Reds went on a yellow card warning. Rebels went on like a 7-phase run, again got within about a metre. Then they got held up. I think it was James O'Connor who held up Kemeny, and new rules for Super Rugby AU means held up as a dropout, so it kind of took a bit of the pressure off. 37 minutes, the Reds really got their scrum going. That's probably when they started exerting quite a bit of pressure on that Rebels pack, because they'd been done a couple of times, I think, for pushing early. But they opted not to go for the 3. They went for touch, and it was the way the lineouts were going, the way the weather was, it just seems like the day to go for the 3, but they weren't doing it. And the Reds were trying these moves, like quite elaborate line-out moves. They weren't just going, let's just set a maul. No, it was like, 2 or 3 passes from a line-out, like back, forth, inside ball kind of thing. And they looked fancy, but they weren't getting a whole lot in terms of the result. A bit elaborate. Right before halftime, Hardwick for the Rebels went close down the left wing, but I think it was Jock Campbell that put in a bit of a try-saving tackle to put his foot in touch. But again, they went back for a penalty for the Reds. Reds were penalised, so Stewart ends up getting gets yellow carded, and it's late here, man. It's late. I didn't want golden point, man. I want to go to bed. The Rebels kicked the penalty to make it 6-0 at halftime. 6-0 at halftime, you'd say the Reds kind of in a way their own worst enemy, because they only had, 45% of the ball, but they had double the knock-ons. They had 8 knock-ons in that first half, which is terrible. The Rebels had 4. I know it's wet, but if you're going to have less ball, you can't be knocking on the ball twice as much. Both sides were tackling real well. Both sides' lineouts were not doing great. 6 from 8 for the Rebels, 6 from 9 for the Reds, and it kind of got worse as the match went on. And the run meters are pretty even. That being said, whatever Brad Thorne mentioned in the sheds at halftime must have worked, because the Reds come out relatively out of the blocks with a man down, and look, just an improved team, man. Dalgunu goes down the left wing for a try. It was a loopy pass from James O'Connor, and they TMO'd it just to make sure, and it was deemed to be all good. They missed the conversion, so it's 5 points to 0, and then there's a bit of handbags a few minutes later, so the guys are feeling it. And then James O'Connor hits a 40-metre penalty again during that yellow card period. So they can't score for 40 minutes with 15 on 15. The Reds go down a man second half and score 8 unanswered points with the man down. They should have played with the man down for more of the game, man. It was bizarre. The Rebels really failed to take an opportunity in terms of having more guys on the pitch. The Rebels struck back pretty much straight away. They had their own line-out move. It was kind of wide passing. And I think it was Korobidi to Dane Hillett-Petty to Hodge. He went over on the right wing. He'd just come on not long before. They missed the conversion, which again, this game's pretty costly, but that made it 11 points to 8, so the lead changes back. 55 minutes, Paisami gets yellow carded, so it's another yellow card for the Reds. But remember, they like yellow cards apparently because they do a lot better. Swing arm to the head of Korobidi. He went off for an HIA. I don't think he came back on. And the Rebels with that extra man on attack, like Tamua kicks it out on the full again. If you're Dave Vessels, you'd have to have your head in your hands. The Reds did miss a penalty during that yellow card period, so they looked like scoring with the man down. That just seems to be what they do. And then on 67 minutes, though, 68, Meeks, he gets a gift try, and the Reds will look back at this one, with a bit of disgust, I guess, because James O'Connor just flicks it out the back, and Meeks is standing in the middle of his line. He won't score many easy ones. That he did have to put the hammer down, but he got through pretty easily. Made it 18 points to 8, and with like less than 15 minutes to go, seems like the Reds are kind of dead and buried at that point. But 74 minutes, they do kick a penalty. It's straight out in front. Commentators, I think, gave James O'Connor a stick for counting on his fingers. I count on my fingers, man. You got to make sure. You don't want to get that stuff wrong. And they made it 18 points to 11, so within striking distance. And sure enough, 78 minutes, James O'Connor gets a line break, passes it to Feo Waisaltia, offload to Murphy, the hooker, and he goes over for a try. Converted to make it 18 points to 18. That's how it finished. Tamua was like doing a cross kick out of his own 22 with like 2 minutes to go. It seemed kind of daft. Either kick it long or just keep the ball. I don't know why you'd be doing that kind of thing when you only got a 7-point lead, but was what it was. So we have our first period of golden point or super time. And I don't know about the schools you went to. I think it's a pretty common term here in New Zealand and possibly Australia, the game force back, where you're trying to kick the ball to the opposition. Well, it's just like usually a game, played casually. You kick it long and see if you can get it over the guy's head. He has to catch it and kicks it back to you, trying to force him back. That's what this was. That game turned into, I don't want to lose. I'm not playing in my own half. I'm going to kick. And then you get a kick back, and then kick back, and kick back, and kick back. It was a ton of kicks. What can you say? Both sides playing it safe. That will be fascinating to watch if there's another game that goes to extra time, whether that's the strategy, whether teams have been working on that kind of thing. Hegarty did have a 50-metre shot after the Red scrum and won a penalty, but he was very marginally, I think, wide. And Hodge, in the second half of extra time, he kicked a 50-22 during that game of forceback, and you could see he lined it up. It was quite intentional. So the Rebels had their own chance to win it, attacking line-out in Reds territory, which, like I said, during that game of forceback was gold. Of course, the line-out. I want to swear. The line-out just can't operate, and a couple of minutes later, not even maybe a minute later, the Reds kick it out, and that's it. It's a draw. So, bit of an unsatisfying end. I don't think the golden point time added much. The super time, it didn't add much. But it may be that the coaches need to plan better ways to attack that time because it's new and they all seemed a little bit lost rather than just trying to hoof it down the other team's end. Final stats, run meters 476 to 507, so pretty close. That was the Reds' number second. Reds had 56% possession and 55% territory. Both lineouts were at 66%, which is, as I said, is pretty shocking. But both teams tackled at 87%, which is very impressive. In the wet, maybe it's a bit slower and it's a bit easier to do that. Penalties conceded 15 to 10. So 15 penalties conceded by the Rebels, and one was a big string of them, like 7 or 8 in a row. They may have been lucky not to get a yellow card of their own. They'll certainly be disappointed not to be able to capitalise on the extra 20 minutes they had with an extra man, and the Reds did remarkably well during that time. They'll probably be a bit more concerned with the way they performed in the first half. But, time for me to go to bed. I could have done without the extra time, but I say it before I say it again. I'll always take a kind of close finish because at least it gives you a bit of tension at the end. You don't know if Hegarty's going to kick that one. You don't know if that line-out's going to work for the Rebels. So, bit of an ugly first half, better second half. Golden point time didn't add a lot, but the teams are still figuring it out. You guys let me know what you thought, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.